Samson is, to start with, is a very, very busy person, right? The life of a CEO, especially an Indian CEO, and a Fortune 30 company can never be easy. So we are trying to have a conversation wherein I'll try, and there is a huge temptation, I must tell you, because what puts the bread on my table is trying to understand, read the minds of these kind of people, but I'll try and stay away from that as much as possible and try and make it something which is relevant to all of us. Samson, welcome. And have you been to Trivandrum before?
Yeah, I've been to Trivandrum before. Beautiful city.
Right. So let us start with Samson David, the CEO, as he is today. Did you always start off by dreaming something like this, or are you a product of serendipity?
I wanted to be a cricketer. I wanted to play for India.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And here I am, product of serendipity, as you said.
So you did your engineering from Pune and had a brief stint with Voltas.
Yep.
And then, before I put this question to him, Infosys, at least to me personally, stands for a lot of values. The first company which had that kind of a global respect, because Indian companies were typically treated as Bania companies, where only trade used to happen. It's all about money. But the values, the systems, the robust processes, and we could hold our heads high and say, look, I'm an Indian. Infosys played a vital role. So 24 years in Infosys. Could you please throw some light on your journey with Infosys before we come to your present company, that is Soroko?
So I'll tell you how I joined Infosys. So I was at Voltas. We were living in Pune with a bunch of friends. And Infosys put this big ad in, I think, the Economic Times. It was a full one-page ad, which said, hey, look, looking for technologists and stuff like that. 3 of my friends wanted to go. They were very keen to join. I had never heard of the company. So I had a choice. Either stay the weekend alone or just tag along.
Okay.
So we just took the overnight train, went to Bombay, and we did this interview.
Right.
I cleared. There were 20 people taken. There was about 1,000 people showed up. I cleared. I got an offer. And I told my boss at Voltas saying, hey, look, I'm joining this really nice company.
Okay.
And he didn't like it. He said, how much are they paying? So I started, my offer was 2,600 rupees when I started.
And how much was Voltas paying you?
7,000 rupees at those days.
Ah.
So it was completely contrarian.
So you're different from,
So he
from
said,
the beginning.
hey, look, I'm going to call your dad saying, you don't know what you're doing. So, and finally, he let me go. So I lived in, I lived in a place called Divlali, which is, 200 kilometers from Pune.
Right.
We didn't have anybody in Bangalore. There was nothing. And I was a young guy, 22-year-old, no money. So I started with one bag, boarded a bus, and came to Bangalore. And there was no place to stay. And those days, there were no mobiles, no nothing. So, one of my friends said, hey, I have a friend. You can stay with him and then figure it out. So I'm all set.
Right.
So I took this bus, one address written, showed up in Bangalore, went to this house, and the house was locked.
Right.
So I waited 2-3 hours, and nobody showed up. And it started becoming dark, and I started getting worried. I didn't know whether this friend's friend had gone to his native place and not going to come back, or he's just gone for dinner and would come back. Then I started getting scared, because there's no plan B. There's no money to book a hotel. There's no phone to contact anybody, and you don't know anyone.
Right.
Then I took an auto and went to the Infosys office, which was a very small place in Koramangala in Bangalore. And I met the security person there and said, hey, look, I'm joining from tomorrow. I have nowhere to go. Can I just sit in the office?
Right.
So he didn't know what to do with me.
Right.
So he went to his boss, they went back and forth. Then the boss took pity on me, the head of security, and he said, okay, come, sit. So I went there. I saw a bunch of computers, bunch of chairs and tables, sat there, and didn't know what was in store. And then after a while he came and he said, there's a conference room. Do you want to use it? I didn't know what a conference room was. So because he said, I said, sure. We went there. He took me to a room which was an 8-seater table.
But this is the previous day of your joining.
This is the previous day. This is day 0, not day 1. There was a conference room with 8-seaters. And then he said, do you want to use this? So I was wondering, what will I do with this room and this table? Then I realized that was my bed. That also happened to be the boardroom of Infosys. So I started my journey. I put my bag, I slept on the table, the boardroom table, and I started my journey with Infosys on day 0. Infosys has been a fantastic journey. Right? Prior to Infosys, there was very little known about India in the world, especially in the US and stuff like that.
Right.
So, when I first went to the US a year later, nobody knew India. So I said, hey, look, do you guys know the starters and builders and stuff like that? And we got this and that. Nobody had heard of it.
Right.
And I think Infosys did a very important thing of putting India on the map. Infosys and other IT services things.
Right.
I had the most beautiful journey with Infosys. I spent about 25 years with them. Did all kinds of roles. I coded a lot. I led client teams. I ran APAC business. I ran some businesses in the US. Lived in the US for about 12 to 13 years.
Right.
Ran their cloud business. Incubated a products and platforms business. I was one of the founders of a product company that Infosys launched, which is EdgeVerve now. So one of the most beautiful things. And
right.
hats off.
So something I took a cue from what you said. It's very evident that you're from a middle-class family or upper middle-class family, where you couldn't even afford a hotel in Bangalore. Now, from 7,000 rupees, you're going to a company which is not anywhere close to what it is today. Did you get the support from your family? Because for middle-class family, salary is everything. And from 7,000, you drop to 2,600 for an entity, the future of which is always uncertain. So how did you convince your parents that you're going to take this job?
Yeah, so, my mom and dad were very supportive of whatever you did. So they said, man, it's okay. Go for it.
Right.
If you feel good about it, go for it.
Right.
So, I'll give you another thing. So, at Infosys, we always had this thing which says, in God we trust.
Right.
Everybody else gets data. So decision making was all about data.
Right.
So we had this leadership program with Mr. Murthy, teaching us.
Right.
And that was the ethos of decision making.
Right.
And I asked him, saying, while we at Infosys teach saying everything has to be database, all decision making, my life experience has taught me that every time I've followed my gut and made a decision, even if data said something else, it's been right. But every time I've overruled my gut, which I felt very strongly, it's not gone well.
Okay.
He gave me the most profound answer which has stayed with me.
Right.
He said, data is used to deselect.
Right.
What you finally select is with your gut. So I went with my gut at that point in time. My parents went with their son's gut.
Right.
And it turned out not bad.
Right. So one question I want to ask you with regard to what you said. There are multiple reasons. The major reasons why people quit a company, quit a job, and it almost become a cliche that you don't quit. People don't quit the companies, they quit their bosses. Now, to go in for a job which gives you not even half the salary that you are drawing, was it that you are fed up with the culture that you are a part of? It is humanly possible, and let's be honest about it. Or is it that there was a sense in you which made you feel that, okay, there's going to be a great learning over here, and this might be the next big thing in the future?
None of the above. The work environment that I had, my boss was fantastic.
Right.
And I was not as smart to really say, hey, look, this is the next best thing.
Right.
It was just a pull of destiny.
Right.
It's just serendipity, as you said, right?
Right.
So there was just a force. I just followed it, and it worked out well.
Now, if you could cast your mind back and say, at the right time of writing your resignation, why did you do that? What did you find in Infosys which probably you thought would be the place for you?
I just felt it was the right thing. There was something beautiful about it. So logically it didn't make sense, but the gut and the heart said, this is what it is.
Right.
So
all the youngsters out there, if your gut says something, you truly believe in that, go with that. That's one lesson that we can take right away from the CEO. And now I have to ask you about, and I want to know more about you, the leader. But before that, Soroko. For all those people who probably might be interested in knowing, Soroko is a company which is owned by Mr. Rohan Murthy, the son of Mr. Narayana Murthy. And it's world's first Workgraph company. So what's Workgraph?
Everyone here uses Google Maps,
Right.
right? So before Google Maps, if you wanted to go from, say, Trivandrum to Bangalore,
Right.
right, you would either have a static map,
Right.
or you would ask somebody saying, hey, look, where's the highway? Then where do I take a left, right, and stuff like that. You would reach there,
Right.
right? With Google Maps, right, now you have the ability. What has Google done? Google has basically mapped every point on the planet.
Right.
For every point, they have the metadata of that point and its relationship to other points.
Right.
With that, they've created something called as a graph. Graph is a computer science term. They've created a graph which has got billions of nodes and billions of edges. What does the graph allow us to do? The graph allows us to first say, where am I? So I am here. There are streets around me. There's a palace next to me. There are restaurants around me. There's a beach around, and so on and so forth. It tells me where I am first.
Right.
Second is, if I want to go from where I am to somewhere else, it tells you, hey, look, there are 5 different ways you can go.
Right.
But this is the best way for you.
Right.
These are the steps. This is the direction. This is how much time.
Right.
And how long will it take for you to get there?
Right.
And any traffic hotspots as well.
Right.
The third thing Google tells you is, hey, look, you start on a journey, but you don't follow what Google said. Google said take left, you took right.
Right.
Google then course corrects. It says, hey, look, redirecting.
Right.
Or found a faster way, right? The fourth thing Google does is, and this is behind the scenes, it opens up its API so other people can build apps on it, right? This is what Google does.
Right.
And we are very familiar with Google Maps.
Right.
What Soroko does is very similar to Google Maps, but it does it in the context of how teams work in enterprises, how enterprises, large enterprises work.
Right.
Right? Which basically means that if enterprises want to know what's going on, how teams are working,
Right.
they can use our Workgraph. We look at how people interact with software, create a graph, which is called the Workgraph. It's called the Workgraph because it's all about how people work, how teams work.
Right.
So they look at it and then say, hey, look, this is how teams are working. This is how large enterprises should operate. This is the change programs that need to be able to do, right? So I have met more than 100 CXOs over the last 6 months globally. All CXOs are focused on 3 things. How do I grow my revenues? How do I optimize costs? How do I deliver a stellar experience to my customers, my employees, and other stakeholders?
Right.
So towards this, they built a lot of strategic programs.
Okay.
But most of them don't go very well.
Right.
Right? The reason for that is they're missing a significant insight. Right? All of them have invested a lot in technology,
Right.
but the technology tells them what their systems are doing.
Right.
The new category of software that we are creating or inventing is about what are their teams doing. In the sense, you look at how people interact with software and create that.
Right.
That's like creating a Google Maps for enterprises. So that's what we are about,
Right.
in simple terms.
So we love dramatization of things, right? This is a technical aspect that he talked about. A new airline is born. There's drama behind that. We would like you to tell us what exactly happened in terms of the creation of Soroko. How did it come into existence? What exactly was the thought process? Who proposed the idea? My firm, came into existence over a cup of tea at a dhaba. So was it something that you planned for over the years, or was it a capricious idea which you thought is a sustainable one, and therefore you went ahead? So could you throw some light on the behind the scenes thing?
So Soroko is not a random name. It stands for something. It stands for Soroko, is Software Robotics Company. So it was a well thought out name.
I did a lot of Googling. It was taking me to Persian, Spanish. I could not get it. Thank you so much.
So it's Software Robotics Company. The company started with 3 techies. One from Harvard, which is Rohan, another one from MIT, and the other one from Carnegie Mellon. So the top-notch, computer science institutes in the world. So these guys formed the company which was focused on automation. Did very well. We've served some of the largest customers on the planet. But as we spoke to customers told us, hey, look, it's great we can automate stuff. But the biggest challenge for customers is, what do you automate?
Right.
Right? And that was the genesis of Scout and the Workgraph,
Right.
which says, saying, hey, look, everybody knows bits and pieces of how you would automate. How do you change the world through knowing? So, for example, Google Maps is transformed the way people travel today, right?
Right.
Nobody worries about, I'm going into a new city or whatever else it is. We want to be the Google Maps for how enterprises work.
Right.
So that's where the idea germinated from our customers. And
Right.
then
Right.
we're building it.
Right. There might be budding entrepreneurs. There might be entrepreneurs over here. 24 years in Infosys would have given you a lot of learning and a lot of confidence. You must have handled a lot of scenarios, both people, technology, customer side, everything. Now, if my reading is right, it took you almost a year for you to crack your first Fortune 500 company when you started Soroko. The weight of the experience, in spite of that, always a starting is our start is a bit of a challenge. Does that indicate that, or was it a very smooth?
Oh,
kind of
there
a
was
flow?
nothing smooth about it.
Right.
And there was nothing smooth about Infosys as well.
Right.
Right? So Infosys, when we used to go to our customers, nobody knew Infosys, nobody, knew anything about India and stuff like that. It's the same thing here. For a startup, you have to earn your thing, right? So you have to, you don't have a big brand. So you kind of go and then you wow them with the idea that you have and the impact that you can have on the customers. So that's absolutely the key. And you keep trying. You're right. The first customer took a while, but now, we are on a roll.
Right.
And so it's like a flywheel. Once it gets rolling and you
Right.
got the right fundamentals, it'll roll.
We will get back to Soroko in a while. I think it's time for us to get behind the man's eyeballs and see what exactly keeps him ticking. He's a leader. Sam, you're a leader. Who is a leader, and what are the core values? If you can, put your finger on three core values that make a leader. What would that be?
Cool. So look, I come from, my father was in the Navy, and I grew up in an army cantonment. So a lot of my thinking around leadership comes from that kind of a background. The other thing is, as I said, I wanted to be a cricketer. You could always find me on the playground. So I captained my school, I captained my college and all that good stuff. And then my parents said, forget cricket, because in those days there was no IPL, no nothing. You just get educated, get a good job, get on with life. So my frame is really with the armed forces and cricket and
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
So to me, a great leader is a guy called MS Dhoni. I think he embodies everything that leadership is about.
Okay.
And to me, the frame, you said three, I'll pick three.
Right.
A leader needs to lead from his heart first. What does it mean? The leader needs to create a sense of purpose. A leader needs to be able to inspire his team. The purpose needs to be bigger than, individual or sets of individuals. It's all about how do you get a team to be focused on the we rather than on the me, right? So that's number one. The leader needs to lead from the heart. A leader also needs to lead from the mind.
Okay.
That is where analytics comes, that's where strategy comes, right? That's where you really plot what you want to do, the execution planning and all. The third thing also which is important is a leader needs to lead by his hands, which is the leader needs to lead by example, right? MS Dhoni never had this thing saying, I'll plan it and this and that, and then you guys go and do it. He was always there when it was needed. Even in that World Cup 6 in 2011, April, right? He was there to the end, and India was in deep trouble. And that was just one match. He's done it multiple times. So to me, leadership is about a great leader. Three attributes of the great leader are around leading from the heart, somebody who can combine leading from the heart, leading from the mind, and leading with your hands, right? That's very, very important. To me, that embodies a great leader. And if you want to look at leadership, and if you're into sports, look no further than MS Dhoni.
Right. It sounds very, very simple, but believe you me, it's pretty hard because I've been trying to do the same for a while. two CEOs, one Indian and one non-Indian. A lot of people look up to you today. The very reason why you're here today is that you inspire a lot of people. Your role models and reference points in terms of CEOs, not leaders, CEOs, one Indian and one non-Indian. Who would they be?
That's a hard question, man.
I know.
No,
That's my job.
I'll tell you. I'll pick two bosses that I've worked with.
Right.
Right. So of course, Mr. Murthy is an icon. Great visionary, great in execution. He's one person who embodies, right, leading from the heart, leading from the mind, leading with your hands. His vision was, he always taught us, saying, you need to create something that will outlive and outlast anything that you would do.
Right.
So that's why Infosys, whether anybody lives or doesn't live, Infosys is a great story. So that's one.
Right.
His ability to execute and strategize was phenomenal. And he always led from the front. Any crisis, anything, he could inspire people like me, who were very young at that point in time. So fantastic. So that's number one.
Right.
The other leader that I've had the privilege to work with is a leader called Mike Lowry. I mean, he used to be the number 2 at IBM, and then he was the CEO and chairman at DXC. Again, an outstanding leader. Same kind of things. He could lift a room. He could inspire. He could set a purpose, which is phenomenal. Very strategic, and always hands-on. So those are the two guys.
Right. Alluding to one of your articles which I went through, and the title is a very catchy one, which says, "When culture aids strategy for breakfast, how about lunch and dinner?" So let's take the key word out of it, culture. We have people quitting jobs and say, culture theek nahi hai, culture is not good, and all of that. How do you define an organizational culture? Because I tell you why I ask this question, because any business is, first and foremost, is profit. If there's no money, there's no profit, you're not existing. So obviously there is competition, there is profits, there is pressure, the sales, everything that comes as a part of that. And on the other side, we also talk about the human touch of it, the values, the principles, and the ethics and all of that. So what is, or how do you define an organizational culture?
So before you talk about culture, right, to me, the first attribute, if you're building something,
right,
building anything is very hard, right? And building it for a long term is really hard, right? So the first thing, the core thing, is purpose, right? So if I have to look at a compass, right, purpose is the stuff that tells you why do you exist in the first place. So you define why do you exist, right?
Yeah.
Then everything else will follow.
Right.
So to me, purpose is like the true north of a compass, right? That tells you, right? And then it stays. When things go good, right, it's the true north. When things don't go very well, that's the true north. The second, which we don't talk as much about, is values, your value system.
Right.
That tells you what is right, what is not. So that flows into what you do, the decisions that you make, in bad times and in good times and all kinds of stuff. So the values is like the north, south, east, west on the dial of the compass.
Right.
Culture, to me, comes later, and that's why I named it that way. Peter Drucker said, hey, look, culture is strategy for breakfast. True, but what about lunch and dinner? Right. That's not the only meal in town, right? So to me, the core is purpose. The second is values. Then comes culture. What is culture? Right. Culture is a code which everybody follows. This is the way we do things. This is the way we decide. This is the hierarchy. This is what it is. So culture has all of those things. Very, very, very important. But it only stems from purpose and values. Culture is a manifestation of values and purpose. Right. That's what it is. Right. Then there is strategy. Right. Then there is execution plan and stuff like that. Right. But the compass is, the true north is the purpose. The east, west, north, south markings are values. How you use the compass is culture. The map is your strategy. Your own walking or driving is execution, right? Without the map or this, if you don't have the true north, it doesn't matter. It won't matter, right? So So to me, that's important. Why is it important? If you're building something for the long term and you're on a hard climb, there are many times where, right, you lose belief. Or you say, hey, what is this? Others lose belief. So if you want to get the entire team together, go with your true north.
Beautiful. Now it's time to talk about something which never changes, which is the change itself. I know it's a bit of a cliche. Change is something that affects everybody. I mean, we keep changing physically, mentally. And I remember Mike Tyson saying, not Mike Tyson, sorry, Muhammad Ali saying, at 40, if you think like when you are in 20, you're wasted 20 years of your life. And it happens in every walk of life, but in corporate, change is something that all organizations struggle to manage. So what's your strategy as a leader to I mean, put in generic terms, to adapt to change? Can you use change as an opportunity when most people look at change as a problem?
Yeah, no, great question. See, I have a 3-point frame, staying with your 3-point thing, for change, right? First thing is accept change. That change is a given. Change is continuously going to happen. It is going to happen, right? If you look at the universe, everything in the universe is moving. Galaxies are moving, planets are moving, everything is moving. Nothing is static.
Right.
Even as we started this conversation, maybe 1 million cells were made and done. We ourselves are changing on a every basis, right? So change is given. Accept it. Once you accept it, how do you accept it in a corporate kind of or an enterprise kind of a setup?
Right.
You look for change then.
Right.
So how do I look for change? I speak to customers because customers will tell me what's going to change, what is changing for them, and hence what could change for me. I look at competition because what they do or not do may change what I need to be able to do.
Right.
You look at technology. New tech comes. It may change what I need to do. So I accept changes there and I listen for it. I sense where the change is coming from. Number one. So that's my first frame, which is accept the change. Second thing is you adapt to the change. Right? In my world, how do I adapt to the change? Right? I focus on 3 things. I need to make sure that my product is insanely desirable for my customers.
Right.
So I have a roadmap which says, hey, I'm going to change my product. Based on all the listening that I've done, I'm going to change my product. So next month this is going to come, the month after this is going to come, this is going to come, this is going to come. So I've got to change program.
Right.
So to make it insanely desirable so that it's architected beautifully and it's economically viable. Right? So I've adapted the change. I've codified the change, and I have a plan to roll out the change. I'm not even worried about, oh, change is coming. I accepted it, I'm adapting it. The third point is, be agnostic to the results. Right? This is some counterintuitive coming from some CEO and all. Don't worry about the results because you don't control the results. Right? Just focus on what you control. Right? And more often than not, if you do the right things, even if it doesn't work, you learn from it. Right? As you would have heard, right, that if it doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger, as long as you're learning. Right? So 3 ways to adopt change that worked well for me. One is accept it. Right? And listen for it, look for it. Second is adapt and start making those changes. Third is don't worry about the results. Be agnostic to the results. Do the right things long enough. Right? You would hear MS Dhoni also say the same thing. Do the right things long enough. Right things will happen.
Make the process of preparation supreme and results irrelevant. The topic says brightening the dark side of the moon. It's a bit of a gibberish abracadabra for a few people. So let's not delve deep into the technical aspects of that. But I need to touch upon that. Transformation programs. In one of your articles, I read that transformation programs mostly are failures. Why are they failures?
Yeah. So as I was saying, right, CEOs, CXOs focus on 3 things. Top line, bottom line, great experience. Towards that, every enterprise has put in a lot of transformation programs, as you said. Right? Some are towards growing revenue, some are towards optimizing costs, some are towards delivering a great experience. But if you look at a McKinsey study or a Bain study or an Everest study, 70% of these programs don't deliver. right? The question is why? You've got great focus, you've got great people working on it, you've got a lot of funding, a lot of investments, you've got a lot of governance. So why do these fail? Our hypothesis is, while you have a lot of good key ingredients, you're missing a key thing. And that is, they're all blindsided with a blind spot. And that is the dark side of the moon. Which is, they don't see. So if you look at the moon in 2D or whatever, you only see one part of it and you say, hey, the moon is lit.
Right.
But there's another half which is behind, which is dark, right? What is the lit side of the moon? Enterprises have, I'll try not to be very technical. Enterprises have got good visibility on what their systems do.
Right.
Okay? And they think that if I observe the system and it'll tell me everything that's going on, and that's how my business is working, or that's how my teams are working.
Right.
But that's not true, because people spend only 40% of their time on their core apps. 60% of the time they're doing something else.
Right.
They are interacting with other team members. They're working on documents. They're working on something else.
Right.
And most enterprises don't have visibility to this, and that's the dark side of the moon.
Right.
The whole hypothesis is, if you can illuminate the dark side of the moon, then you have the full moon picture, right?
Right.
And then you can do magical stuff, especially with enterprises. So much is going on, you can do magical stuff, right? To enlighten the dark side of the moon is the map, the Workgraph map, which is the Google Map equivalent, and that's how we kind of go about it. So that's at a very high level what the dark side of the moon is about and how the Workgraph ties to the graph.
Those days in my childhood, we only had the Doordarshan. We never had the cable network. And The Man and the Machine, there was a series called Street Hawk. Sorry, not Street Hawk, it is, Street Hawk. So it was a machine thing, and a man combines with the machine. And now it has become very, very significant today, because the man is a man, he continues to be the man. The machine, the evolution and the rapid progress of technology, sometimes it can be threatening. So how do we ensure the human touch? Because artificial intelligence, you literally have something you don't have to reach out. You just say, Alexa, do it for me, it's going to do it for you. So how do we, in a rapidly changing technology-based environment, how do we ensure the human presence, the human importance, and the human touch?
No, a fantastic question. So if you look at it, technology is fundamentally been there to augment human capability and to amplify human capability, right? Let me give you an example. Let's look at ourselves, right? Look at the eyes, right? I want to see as a human being, right? Without this, my eyesight is not as good.
Right.
This is a piece of technology.
Right.
I could put a lens as well.
Right.
I want to see into the stars.
Right.
I build a telescope.
Right.
Technology, augmenting what I want to do, the human, right?
Right.
I want to see deep.
Right.
I have a microscope.
Right.
I want to see things which are not normally seen. I have an X-ray, this and that, right? That's one example. If you look at, I want to communicate, right? I want to communicate with my daughters who are in the US. I can't scream and connect, but there is a phone, there's a video, there is all this social media and stuff like that. What I'm saying is, technology, even if we were a caveman who didn't know how to do fire or didn't know the wheel, all of those were technologies. But technology has never overtaken the human being. Technology's purpose is to serve the human being, which is to augment and to amplify the human being's capabilities, right? So that's always going to be there. Even future technologies, AI is going to augment what the humans do. Machine learning is going to augment what humans do.
Right.
However, it is up to the human being to constantly learn.
Right.
Right? If you look at, 100 years ago,
Right.
the mode of transport was predominantly, say, a horse carriage. So if I was a horse carriage driver at that point in time, that piece of technology, which was horse carriage, was fantastic. I could ferry people around and I was fantastic. But technology has evolved. If I didn't learn as a horse carriage, today, the way I move around, I could move around in a car, I could do it on a bike, I could do it on a plane, I could do it in a ship. It is exploded.
Right.
The whole transportation industry, the mobility industry.
Right.
But if I'm just the horse carriage guy and I've not learned any other skills,
Right.
I may not have been a pilot. No, I could not have been a chauffeur or whatever else. That's what technology. So technology is about. It will always be sub to the human. It will augment the human being.
Right.
It will amplify what the human does.
Right.
But the human being has to constantly learn. So they continue to be the master of technology. So that's the way I look at it.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderfully put. We live in a democratic country, but we are also used to dictatorship. If you look at it, many of our families will have one person taking the decision, which is the father, invariably. At least in my case, it's like that. And some of us take that culture into the organizations, and we become leaders. We somehow become incapable of letting it go. My question is, what's your style of delegation? And when you delegate, and I'm sure at least a few people listening to you would love to know, how do you like to delegate, and what are the key essentials when you give something to somebody in terms of responsibility?
No, great question again. See, my style is encapsulated in a word called BEAT, which is B-E-A-T.
Okay.
My first thing is,
That's your acronym?
that's mine.
Okay.
My first thing is, the B is about creating a sense of belongingness within the team.
Okay.
Right? So everybody plays for the team. So it's more about the we than about the me. So that's the first thing. So that's where purpose comes in, values comes in. So they're all playing for something bigger than themselves. That's one important thing that I strive to create. Once you've said that, then you empower the team. The E in BEAT is about empowering the team. So I'll get my next level and say, hey, look, you're empowered to make the call.
Right.
But as Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility. That's the A, which is about being accountable. So you're empowered, but you're just not empowered to just go around and do stuff. You're also held accountable for delivering it then.
Right. Right.
And then the T is, for my job, is to create an environment of trust within the team, which is, hey, look, I can depend on you, you need to depend on me.
Right.
And if we fail, despite our best effort, it's all right. There is a safety net, right?
Right.
So that's the way I go about it. So there is B, which is create a very strong sense of belongingness.
Right.
You empower your teams, but you hold them accountable, and then you create a great safety net. So nobody is afraid to take a shot.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
for example, Surya Kumar Yadav, he has to play the way he has to play. And when it comes off,
Right.
yeah, when it comes off, it is, I think she's very busy. Hi. So when it comes
Thank you.
off, it is fantastic. But when it fails, you still need to back, because that guy can change the game with nothing. Right?
Right,
So that's the way I do it.
Right. Challenges. I remember my campus placement days, and one of the companies gave us a case study of something that happened in their organization as a part of the pre-placement talk. And we said, oh, that's tough. And they said, we need managers like you because things are not easy, things are tough. Over the years, I don't know how many years in total, 24 plus, whatever, I guess it's about 33?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in this 33 years of experience, I'm sure that there might have been fire almost every other day, if not every day. Could you recollect, if there's a case study as an example for all of us to follow, one of your biggest challenges and the way you solved it so far? Something where you thought your life is on the line.
There are too many of them.
Just one. We don't have the time for too many, we'd love to listen to,
No.
but we have a time constraint, so one is enough.
As you're scaling teams, right? So for example, in my last job, I led a team of 250,000 people. That's a large team, right? To know what they're doing, to be able to support them,
Right.
right? To be able to motivate them, to be able to make sure that all 250,000 people are really moving in the same direction, right, that the company wants. Those are really mega challenges. And to be
Right.
able to, and you can't be there with everybody all the time.
Right.
Many of the times you can't even see, they're all in different locations.
Right.
Right? It's hard.
Right.
Right? And so you use the principles that I talked about and try and do your best. So
Right.
that's
right.
what you do.
Right. So when you hear the word CEO, what comes to your mind? There's power, there's position, there's a fat paycheck, all facilities given to you. But it also comes with immense stress, pressure, right? I think the first time we sat up and took notice of that was back in 2009 when Ranjan Das was just aged 41. I know it's a very negative of an example, but we have to take it. He died because of stress. He never used to sleep. And Rudra Tej Singh is the latest to join, both in their 40s. Now, how important is work-life balance for somebody who handles a responsibility as huge and senior as you are, number one? And number two, I'm comparing two questions because we have a time constraint. Number two is, what is Samson David, the CEO, like out of his office? How do you relax?
No, so, I mean, I hear this work-life balance thing a lot, and I don't understand the question many a times. And I'll tell you why. See, work-life balance implies that I inhale,
Right,
I hold my breath for 8 to 10 hours, and I'm working.
right,
Then I exhale,
right,
right? And then I relax.
right,
But life doesn't operate that way, right?
Right.
Life is a continuum.
Right.
I breathe in, breathe out every second, right?
right.
So that's the way I view it. It's not like I inhale for 10 hours and then I exhale for, whatever else hours, 14 hours.
Right.
So it is important to find the balance. And the way I find balance is, from the beautiful concept of ikigai from Japan, which really says, you answer the following, right? What do you love doing?
Right,
What are you good at,
right,
right?
right,
What do you get paid for? And then, does it matter to the world? So those are circles which kind of cut. The intersection of all these 4 circles is your Zen state.
right.
But you
right.
can't be at the intersection of all 4 circles at the same time. But you fundamentally try and do what you love doing.
Right, right, right.
It should be connected to what you're good at. For example, you're a great, music person, right? I love to listen to music, but, and that's good.
Right.
But if I had to start playing something, it would be disaster.
I
That
understand.
would cause stress.
That's
right?
the way we try to
Right.
make it to the Indian cricket team.
Yeah. So, right? And then you get paid for it as well. Because, if you can do all the good stuff, you're working hard and, you're good at it, you don't get paid for it, causes stress, right?
Right.
It needs to matter. There needs to be purpose to life.
Right.
So, if you can balance all this
Right.
in everything that you do, you get up in the morning, right? You go for a jog, you do your yoga, you spend time here, you work, you watch movies. I'm a big movie fan, big into cricket, big into some. As long as you can balance everything, every breath that you take, I think you're okay. Right?
Right.
Stress comes from, hey, I'm in a place where I shouldn't really be.
Right.
That stresses you out.
Right.
But if you balance this ikigai circles,
Right.
then it's all right.
Yeah.
Right? And then it flows. So balance is key. Balance across these dimensions is key. And the approach that every breath you need to be balanced. Not that I'm one way 8 hours, then another 8 hours, then that is stress, right?
Right,
Then the
right.
transition doesn't work.
Right,
That's
right.
the way I have kind of
Right.
this thing, right? So for example, my dog, we have a dog, a golden retriever. We have this tradition that we go out on a drive every evening.
Right.
So father and son. I
Right.
mean, he's the son, I'm the father.
Right, right.
So you find your own ikigai in different ways.
Right.
And find it. It doesn't have to be anything grand, anything, whatever. But find the balance.
Right.
Do it in every breath, and you find.
Right. So when you enjoy what you do, your work becomes your life, and your life becomes your work.
No, it's a
And it
continuum.
really
It's a
can't.
part of my life, as long as I'm working. And then something else is part of my life.
Right.
When I was in school, studying was part of my life.
Right.
So life will change.
So technically, you may not qualify, technically as an entrepreneur, but you're as good as an entrepreneur in terms of shouldering the responsibility and stuff. And startup is a fad. It's something that we hear a lot these days. 2 heads of the institutions, engineering colleges, told me recently that one common quality that people have is the number of backlogs to become a startupper. Jokes apart, a lot of people want to become startuppers. There is a success story, it's an inspirational story, but there are thousands of stories of failures as well. In your view, because a lot of youngsters I can see here, who should be a startupper? Slightly an abbreviated question from probably what we have been talking about, but what would be your piece of advice to people who want to do something on their own in terms of business?
So I've done 3 startups.
Right.
So I joined Infosys when Infosys was a startup. It was the original startup.
Right.
Right? Then within Infosys, I founded a company called EdgeVerve. So that was my idea, my stuff within that. Infosys was a wholly owned subsidiary of Infosys.
Right.
That was my second startup where I was the founder.
Right.
And this is my third startup where I'm the CEO. All in different stages, all in different things.
Right.
I think the core things of startup is, again, find your purpose, find your ikigai. Why do you exist? What difference does it make?
Right. Right.
Once you settle on that, focus on 3 things. following your three principle, right? The humanics, mechanics, and economics of the startup. Humanics is create a product which is insanely desirable for your customers. So identify who your customers are, what do they really want, right? And create that particular thing. For that you need empathy. So you need to really empathize, you need to put yourself in your customer's shoes and be able to do it. So that's very, very important. Second is the mechanics of it. Make sure that you're able to deliver. You can sell a dream saying, hey, look, I can take you Mars and back in 1 hour. Great thing. Yeah, desirable. Can you do it? No. You need to back the talk with the walk. That's the second thing, which basically means put a great team together, identify a great tech, put it all together and make it come to life. That's the second thing. Then the economics. Make sure that you deliver value, sustained value to your customers, to your employees, and to yourself, the organization. So that would be my thing. Find a great purpose and then balance the humanics, mechanics, and economics of it. It's harder said than done. And do it when things are going well. Do it when things are not going well. And never leave the fundamentals. Like cricket is, you can talk as much as you want about cricket, but it's about batting, bowling, and fielding. Right? The team which brings that together well is the team which wins most of the days. Right? So that's what it is. In startups, make sure you bat well, make sure you bowl well, make sure you field well. Right? The humanics, mechanics, and economics.
Beautiful. Let me frame a question based on something which is slightly sensitive. I know that it's painful. I'm a Malayali, so I think this question comes from that perspective. We have Kerala as a state has one of the highest percentages of literate people. We have 100% literacy. But the ironic reality is that the state is also one of the states with the highest percentages of literate, unemployed people, right? From a corporate scenario, employability skills, percentage is one thing, having a theoretical knowledge is another. I'm sure that you must have come across in your own experience, right, from the junior ones to senior people. So what should people do to make themselves, I'm talking about the youngsters in particular, make themselves employable? What should they focus on?
No, so look, I mean, as you said, Kerala is phenomenal in the kind of talent that it offers. And there are tremendous amount of opportunities. See, today, you're not limited by a region that you're in. The globe is your stage. So if you've got, if you want to train yourself, you've got it available. You can get into several platforms. If you want to reach out to people, all those platforms are available. And, the globe is your stage, so you should not really worry about it. I mean, my thing is keep learning, keep upping the ante, make yourself visible and available for all the opportunities which are out there, and go for it, guys.
Right. We are looking for a message from you to the youngsters, 3 things that they need to do to become successful and to become leaders. I'm not even talking about the corporate leadership or the CEO per se. Here, what should people do to become successful and to become leaders?
3 things. 1, your future is not a function of your past.
Right.
So no matter where you come from, look at me. I mean, I came from a very, small background, from a very small place and stuff like that. The future is not a function of your past, so you're not tied to it. So go for it. You have the world at your disposal. Go for it. Number 1. Number 2 is learnability will always beat experience. Always focus on, am I better today than I was yesterday?
Right.
And it doesn't matter beyond that.
Continuous
That's
improvement.
the second thing. Continuous improvement. Absolutely right. The third thing is, don't worry about results.
Right.
Just do the right things. Right. And if success comes, don't let it go to your head. If failure comes, don't let it go to your heart. Right. Just keep learning and going. And believe in yourself. There are a lot more opportunities now than there were, when I started. So the world is at your disposal, guys. Go for it.